Bismillah, in the name of God, the most merciful, entirely merciful, and specially merciful. Uh, Today we are here to talk about a very important topic, and that is the last arrangements of our life, as well as a will, which is mandatory in Islamic religion. We have some distinguished guests here. A lot of you are watching us online right now. And if you have any questions, you can write it on our YouTube channel and we'll have it answered. We'll start today's program by the recitation of Holy Quran by Sheikh Naeem. I'll request Sheikh Naeem to please come and start the recitation of Holy Quran.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين صدق الله العلي العظيم صلى الله على محمد وآل محمد
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وجل.
Honored guests, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I hope everyone is doing well today. Although it's a happy occasion, but we're speaking about something that has to do with a sad occasion, which is writing the will. Writing a will, writing a contract, this has been prescribed and prescribed to us by the Prophet of Allah, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
And as we know, any contract that we have or any business that we have, we are instructed to write a specific contract and what we want to be done in a specific way, and the contract is signed or agreed upon between the two individuals. Even when it comes to business, when it comes to marriage, everything in Islam has its contract. And again, we are recommended to write down these contracts, because if anything were to happen, our offspring or our loved ones that we left behind will know exactly what to do in certain situations. So for example, if someone passes away and then they haven't written certain instructions or certain will regarding their house or whatever it is, the family may divide according to this, because they say, no, this is my rights, this is my will. But for example, if the father has a specific will or specific instruction for their families, then they should write it down. We are told by famous hadith by our beloved Prophet Muhammad, may peace be upon him, sallallahu Muhammadin wa Muhammad. I'm not going to read the Arabic one because I don't want to make it lengthy. So I'm just going to read the translation of it. And here we are told to write the will before the death, right? So what's recommended actually, what's really, really recommended for someone to do is to write their will and put it underneath their pillow. So this is what he says. He says, whoever fails to write his will sensibly before his death lacks a reason and manliness. And then the prophet, was asked, how should like one excellent writing of one's will by Allah's Messenger. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala instructed, in the last hour of his lifetime, and when people gather around him, he must say, and then that's when the Arabic version comes, and then I'll just read. The Prophet says, he says, this is the covenant of the dead person when he makes his will, which is obligatory, which is mean wajib, upon each Muslim's individual. So it's wajib upon us. Okay? There's a difference between wajib aini and wajib kifaya. We're gonna get into that later on, inshallah, within our lectures. And then he says, commenting on this was our sixth Imam, Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam, where he says, certifying this fact, Allah the All-Blessed, the Exalted, says in Surah Maryam, in Surah 19, in chapter 19 of the Holy Quran, where he says, they shall not control intercession save he who has made a covenant with the benevolent Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then the Prophet here instructed the Imam Ali alayhi salam to learn this covenant and advise the members of his household, meaning the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, and his adherents, meaning the Shi'as, which are all of us, to learn it. And then he added, I have been taught this by the Archangel Gabriel, also known as Jibreel. So we see how the Prophet really emphasized and made the will very, very important. Because as we know in the Islamic history, when it came to the will of Rasulullah, how some people ignored this will and some people remained on this will. So we see how it can determine a whole nation just by simply ignoring a will. So if we want our lineage to move on and to carry on with our will, we should carry on, we should write our will and how we want things to be handled. So for example, where we want to be buried, what we want to be done with our properties, and so forth. Sallallahu Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheikh Naim. As there are different topics today that we're going to discuss, and we're going to start with the burial process, as well as the second part of it will be the will, for which we have two distinguished guests here today. Mike from Greenlawn Cemetery is available, and then we have Brother Zia Wazir here on our request. So I'm going to start with giving a little bit of introduction for you, why we are here and what we do. Most of you know me. My name is Mohsin Naqvi. I have been a licensed financial advisor in the province of Ontario for 25 years. So dealing with the estate planning part of people's life has been part of my life. And I have seen siblings fighting over a chain of necklace that the mom left. So it is that reason that, like Sheikh Naim said, what a beautiful book, Quran. It answers every single question that we have, from the arrival on this earth till the dismissal from this earth. Everything is prescribed. And I'm going to start with Surah Al-Baqarah. It's verse 181. 180. It is prescribed when death approaches any one of you, if he leaves any good, that he may want to make a will. to parents and next to the kins, according to the reasonable usage. This is due from the God fearing. And then verse 182, God says, but if anyone fears wrongdoing on the part of the testers, then make peace between the parties. There is nothing wrong in doing it, for Allah is oft forgiving and most merciful. So Allah has already prescribed in Surah Baqarah, verse 181 and 82, that's made it mandatory for you to have a wasiyah. And there is a reason Sheikh Naim might define it a little bit more. One of the reasons is that there are something that are wajibat, like loans. Before you were buried, anybody you owe the money to should forgive you. So that is the reason Sheikh Naim gave the hadith that one should have a will written and under their pillow. So if they don't wake up, the family should know what to do. So we're gonna start with the process. Unfortunately, in last 4 months alone in Windsor, we have 4 people, some of them among our own from the Batool, who passed away, and that opened the eyes of many among us to start looking into it on a serious note. So I'm going to start the process. The process is somebody dies. First thing you need to do is call 911. So once you find out somebody is dead, call 911. The process is that the police and the ambulance will come. They will take the body to the hospital. Now, there are different scenarios. For example, if it is somebody older, in their 70s or 80s, and they have medical conditions, most probably they will release the body immediately. If you are 35 years old and you woke dead, they will investigate it. They will send the body to the coroner's office and have an autopsy done on the body. And then the body will be released. The third situation is where there's a possibility that somebody has what you call it, dead baby, so they will release the body to the parents immediately for burial. So whatever the situation is, that is the first thing. The government gets involved, and then the next step will be the funeral home. So we have dealt with 2 different funeral homes, Anderson on Olat Avenue, as well as Windsor Chapel on Dougal Avenue. So they have good facilities. We are already talking with them to come up with a plan. We are also talking with the Green Lawn about the cemetery and the digging package. So starting with what happens once the body is released from the hospital, somebody has to take over the body. And the body has to be given to a licensed facility, and that will be a funeral home. A funeral home have people who are legislated and they have necessary education to help you with the final stages. Once the body is assumed by the funeral home, the next step is the ghusl and the final departure. So for ghusl, we have a few people who are very experienced at Imam Hussain Foundation. But that brings us to another point, and that is that we will be having a class of ghusl mayyit at the Batool, and we have talked with Sheikh Zain to teach that class. We have 6 volunteers who have come forward to do so, but the most important thing is that we need to get the youth involved. We die, who's gonna bury the other people? So the people who are in their 20s to 30s, they need to learn. I know it's scared to go in the dead bodies room, right? But we are in our 50s, 60s, and 70s. The next generation need to know what happens, how to bury, how to give ghusl. So we need to encourage the youth as well to come and attend those classes for the ghusl. So once the ghusl is performed, all the Islamic rituals are done at the funeral home, and later the body is transported from funeral home to the cemetery, where we have expert people like Mike available, and they give you the detail on different parts of it, and he will discuss it. The grave in the cemetery, the bylaws of the cemetery, the tombstone that you want to put in, whatever the situation is. So that is the process. That if somebody don't wake up the next morning, you start with dialing 911 and follow the process. We make it very short for you. You dial 911 and just call us, and we'll take over for you and do all the arrangements on your behalf. So with that being said, most important thing is that once somebody dies, and we have seen it within our community, that death is an expense. And it's an immediate expense of about $10,000, payable within few days, which most of the people are ill-equipped to come up with $10,000 just the next day, right? So there are different ways to handle the situation. I just joke around with people on this thing that I have a family of 6, so I need to have a $60,000 to bury my own family. And how many people among us are equipped to do so? I don't think so. So we need to plan into looking into it, that if we die unexpectedly, what happens and how the funds will be raised. So that is the part we can play at the Batool. The other parts are the cemetery itself. I will ask Mike to please come and introduce his company and the services they provide to the Muslim Shia community in Green Lawn Cemetery. Thank you.
Excuse me. Let me go this way.
Yes, anyway.
I'm good with that. Thank you. Thank you, Molson, and good afternoon. To introduce myself, my name is Michael Kelleher. I've been working in the cemetery funeral industry for the last 37 years. My main cemetery is Green Lawn and Victoria Memorial Highway number 3 here in Windsor. So the questions have become lately when Molson and I've gotten together is what's kind of like the process. As Molson explained, the fact that typically the call is made, but who contacts us is the funeral home. Sometimes it's the family as well, because if they've done things ahead of time, they may call us first. But the reality of it is that as far as families preparing, I can't emphasize enough how important wills are. And to dovetail on that, as far as when one has things in place, at the cemetery, it makes that moment just that much easier for the family when that event does arrive. We plan all our lives. We plan a weekend. We plan, from picnics to vacations, weddings. The reality of it is, it just makes sense. But the thing of it is, it's the nature of what we do. And I'm the first to admit that. Who wants to talk about this subject? So sometimes I think it's best to maybe address something that may be unpleasant, address it, put it away, and then we can go about our lives and our daily activities. Because when a death occurs and we do not know the circumstances upon a death, it's nice to think that we're all going to grow old and one day just, not wake up. The reality of it is there's illness, there's tragedies, so we don't know how our death will occur and when it will happen, obviously. So the thing is our end and our role, we're fortunate as that we actually have an area at our cemetery, Green Lawn Memorial, where we have a Muslim section, and to the best of my knowledge, it's the only area in our vicinity where the actual burial spaces are actually turned. So we can actually respect and make sure the interment rite is to the culture of your religion and faith. Actually, just a little bit of background on that. It's been an honor for me because it was 31 years ago that we opened that section, and it's really truly been an honor to serve the community. It's been a learning experience for me, but a real positive one. To get into what happens, and you would know this when you experience a loss, is that from the Muslim community, things need to be done as soon as possible. And we honor that. And I've received phone calls, you know, early evening, and the interment or burial is the very next day. There are times and things might not be able to go that way for other circumstances beyond our control. But the reality of it is when things, if a family does have the foresight to actually prepare the burial site, it will make that moment so much easier. And then what I like to say is when things are done ahead of time, then when the death does occur, the family can actually focus on what's important, and that's being with family and supporting one another. That's kind of like the Reader's Digest version of what we do without getting into all the legislative stuff. And just so you know that to be in this business and do what I do, you do have to be licensed. We are a regulated industry, which is a positive thing. It's a good thing. It's all about a consumer and consumer protection. Do you have any questions for me there, Molson? Yes.
Just wondering about you mentioned about your facility, so how big is it, the Muslim portion?
So, are you familiar with Greenland at all?
No, I think we've been.
Yeah, like, the reality of what we do and what I do is, people aren't familiar with us, and I understand that. It's not something you decide to do, just, let's go drive around out to the cemetery. Why would you go unless you had a reason to do so? So, actually, we have 2 cemeteries and a funeral home. So the footprint's 160 acres. We have 120 of it that's developed for as cemetery land. You got about 15, 16 kilometers of roads, structures, buildings. It's almost like a small little town. But the Muslim section we have right now, it's a few acres.
Okay.
Specifically, because the reality of it is we are an all-denominational cemetery, so therefore we deal with all different faiths and cultures.
What about average cost of burial, the digging and?
Certainly, so we call it the interment. Your opening and closing is commonly what it's referred to as. So right now, it's $1,250 plus HST, and the burial spaces are like $28.15, I believe, plus HST. We're subject to HST like everything else.
Right.
And what happens, just so you are aware, when one does or a family chooses to prepay things are guaranteed. So as costs increase, they will not increase for that family. And we are affected by inflation and our costs increase of operating just like any other industry or business. Sometimes even more so because of the uniqueness of what we do and our operating costs. It is a reality.
So you mentioned that you get the call from the funeral home.
Yes.
So how is it, like, we need to call you directly for the space, or in advance?
Sure. If it's in advance, you just call us. You can just call me, and then we can sit down and we can have a conversation and answer any of your questions. The thing of it is that before any burial can take place, there's what's called an authorization. We need permission to bury someone, even when it's a lot owner, even if someone owns their lots and that person has passed away. We still require someone to come out prior to say, yes, it's okay to open that particular space for the burial at such and time. Yeah.
Thank you.
Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Good. But ahead of time, just call me.
I had a question about
Sure.
the Muslim section. You know, the Muslim section, it's surrounded by, there's a road that goes around it. That tree-lined area in the back, is that also like part of the cemetery? And in the future, is that something that could possibly be developed, or is the intent there if expansion is necessary?
That's a great question. Where that tree line is, you're familiar, obviously, good for you. So the tree line, that is the end of our property. And you notice we have that trail? The trail, that's part of the Greenway Trail, they call it now, right? So that actually connects right from the river. You can go all the way to Leamington. We donated land to IRCA so they could make that trail back there. To dovetail on your question too, we're fortunate where we do have additional lands, and we are exploring that possibility right now of developing it actually for the Muslim families in our community.
Would that be close to it?
It's fairly close. So you're coming around, if I could do this right,
Yeah.
but when you come around and then as you're heading out, you know that big building
Yeah.
that you see immediately to your left?
Uh-huh.
There's some land, that's what we're looking at.
Okay.
It's a real process, and just, it's not, I know it seems like it's just land and you bury, but there is a regulatory process that one has to go through. It's not something you can just say, okay, we're gonna start burying people here tomorrow. It doesn't quite work that way, which is not necessarily a negative thing, because things have to be done correctly.
Thank you.
And that's the one-time cost, whatever you told us.
Yes.
That one, that's the one-time cost.
Correct.
The maintenance and everything is.
Yes, thank you for that, Syed. What people need to be made aware of is the fact that when you purchase cemetery property, whatever that price is, we have to deposit 40% of the cost of that cemetery plot into trust. So for every $1,000 that a cemetery lot is, we have to take $400 and deposit that into trust for the long-term maintenance of that particular burial space. That money, once it's deposited into trust, it's irrevocable, but what it does do, it does earn interest, which does come back to the cemetery to help offset the cost of operating and maintaining.
And when you talk about, having it in advance, so is that some kind of payment installments?
If that's what a family chooses to do, absolutely, yeah.
There is a possibility of.
Yes, and that's typically, like I say, when we have that conversation, that's a conversation you wanna have with each individual family, because everybody's needs and situations are a little bit different, and we do whatever we can to accommodate them.
I understand.
And we've been doing it for a long time.
Okay, thank you.
There's only one, I will clarify one little thing. So, even if things are prepaid ahead of time, everything is guaranteed, whatever that family has prearranged is 100% guaranteed. Just so you're aware, if the burial has to take place on a Saturday, there would be an overtime fee. Because our crew, they don't come in on Saturdays unless there's an interment, and they are paid.
So how much the extra cost for the overtime?
On a Saturday?
Approximately, yeah.
That's a really good question. It's $410, I believe.
Last tax.
Oh, yes, you always have to tax. Yes, well, we gotta keep the roads paved, right? So, yes.
And what about that one that I visited several times, or almost every month, that one? Because in a Muslim, that one, we need some tap water to put on a grave, that one, but there is nothing on there, that one. There is
Well,
a one
Yes,
tap water, but it's not working.
because we have to shut them off. So they'll be back on in early spring.
Oh, okay.
We have to blow the lines out for the winter time because they'll freeze. Hi.
Sorry, guys.
No, it's okay.
I wanted to ask about the washing. Does it actually happen like in your?
No,
Okay,
that's a great question. That is done at the funeral home. Or there are, I know there's another mosque here in town, they do their own too, right? So that is something that your community, you would set up with, either with a funeral home or the mosque.
Just another question. Also, you said that in your cemetery, it's like towards the Qibla, right? Like the
Yes.
burial? Okay.
Yes, because we know actually the body is turned, but if when you're out there, well, like people don't really pay attention too much to things as far as cemeteries go. But if you want to come out, I will show you. But the reality of it is the lots in most of the cemetery are all facing kind of one way. So in our Muslim section, they are actually turned, and they are actually, when that was laid out in 1991, I believe, we actually, we used a compass. We had our engineering department there, and so it's done correctly.
The cost you mentioned, that one, that only include that open and close and open and close, and then whatever the plot cost, that one. It's not included the cascade or something like that.
No, so I think what a lot of people need, like, people see our industry as one, but the reality of it is, there's two things you basically have to do. You have a funeral arrangement, and when I say funeral arrangement, that's just dealing with the funeral home or a transfer service, which basically would pick the body up from place of death, all the documentation that needs to be done, and then, meeting with the family, that sort of thing, and then, delivering the deceased to the cemetery for committal or burial. So there are two things to do there, two separate things. So on our end, my end, it's like your cemetery plots, then you also have like, your tombstones or flat markers, whatever the family wants to choose. Certain areas of the cemetery, it's, they only allow maybe that like flat type of memorialization. When I say memorialization, that's what I'm talking about, headstones or people, that's what they commonly refer to them as. Or is it gonna be an upright monument? It all depends on the area.
And is there any city law that one, how much deep we can go there? Or we can, because mostly in our country, that one, that we don't go on a deep too much, that one.
Okay.
So is there any bylaw in a city or? we
Actually,
can-
there actually is. So it has changed over the years. Uh, There has to be so much fill above the burial itself. And the number of that, I think it's like 2 feet or something. But we go down, you're down, the barrels go 5 feet into the ground.
No, we don't wanna go deep, that one, we can't, we wanna keep up that one.
We have to have, by law, we have to make sure. that
Okay.
We have to meet a minimum standard.
Oh, okay.
We've been doing it long enough, it's not like we have to use a measuring tape, so.
Yeah, for the more deep, we wanna this guy.
Well,
Yeah.
we could make notes in our records, because I've been keeping an eye on them too, so I see what you mean.
But there's a question from the lady.
Sorry, yes.
I have a question, so, the
Can we
funeral
have the
home is
mic?
I can hear you.
okay, the funeral home is a necessity, I'm understanding, right? Based
Yes.
on the Ontario laws. So it's not like after the hospital, the person can go to the Imam Hussein Foundation for the ghusl and then be buried, it's not that way at all?
You're gonna have to like, that's what they do. And they're licensed to do that, so, like, if you're asking, could you go around a funeral home or something like that? In theory, the answer to that would be yes, but I've never seen anyone do it. There's too much to do, and they're professionals, that's what they do. There's a lot that goes,
So the Muslim community member will give still the washing, like the
Yes,
ghusl that is called
absolutely.
at the funeral home?
correct,
Okay,
yes,
so it's not like there is a section at the mosque, like back home, for example.
sure.
They don't have funeral homes, so you go from home to hospital to the mosque,
Mhm.
and then you get buried. So I just wasn't sure if the funeral home was optional or no. But
It's important, it's really important. You know what I'm saying, right?
Yeah,
So
but-
I will answer
but-
that
but-
question.
Yeah, like it's,
But they don't have the facility on.
That's-
Right, I think the clarification is just simply that the funeral services are performed, whether you call it the ghusl, whether you call it the casket, right? So that's being taken care of within the funeral services.
it's
Segment.
still the ghusl they have.
Yes, complete. And then you've got a,
So what happens is-
separate than that.
when a death occurs, and once the body's released, the funeral home picks the body up from place of death. And then that process begins, whether you're coming out to our cemetery, or not, or any other cemetery. And then the funeral home, they contact us, they let us know that this individual has passed away. And then we start to get, do our thing as far as, does a person own, or do they need to buy property, whatever the case may be. When it's prearranged, there's a record of it. So they let us know that this individual has passed away. Then what happens is, there'll be an appointment made, and that family will come out to the cemetery, sign off before the interment, and then it's done. No money exchanges hands, there's no big decisions to be made. And that's kind of what I would say is the most important thing about when it's done ahead of time. You eliminate those decisions that have to be made at probably one of the worst moments of your life, and also to the money part of it doesn't come up because it's paid. So I don't have to ask families for money. And there was a day we didn't, but today that's just a reality. I have to ask a family that needs to be paid prior to burial.
So you are working with all funeral homes?
Yes. Yes.
And you don't have a funeral home?
Yeah, we do. We have one right on the cemetery grounds.
Oh, so you.
Yeah, we do. We have several in the city,
So-
actually.
Okay, so it is possible that, you can take care of everything, if we,
Sure,
like,
yeah,
talk to
absolutely.
you.
Like Windsor Chapel, as an example, it's part of our family.
Oh,
But I will say this, just whoever you deal with, they are going to take very good care of you. We have excellent funeral homes and excellent cemeteries in our area. We just do. Everybody's very professional.
What the timing, that one? What the timing for your,
As far like
Cemetery.
as far as when someone passes away, is
Yeah.
that what you mean?
yeah,
Well,
what time we can go there, that one, and, starting time and end time to burial?
Well, burials take place basically from 9 to 4, 9 to 5.
9 to 4.
Yeah, we want to have, the latest we want to see a family come in, or for the actual burial itself, is about 3:30. Because there's a process that has to be done, and our crew, they want to go home at some point, obviously. But if there's circumstances where it has to be later, that can be accommodated as well. If it must be.
Is there any certificate you issue that one after burial or no?
It's like when you buy a plot, as an example?
No,
yes.
no, any certificate or anything, that one, that we bury this guy in here or something like that? Are you going to issue a certificate or something like that?
When you purchase cemetery property and
Okay.
cemetery products and services, once that cemetery plot is paid for, you do receive what's called a certificate of interment right, meaning that's your, like, commonly known as a deed. So you do receive a certificate that states that you do own that land. And if you have prepaid other services, you will get a certificate of entitlement, which lists whatever else has been prepaid. So if they prepaid the digging, as an example, it will be listed on there. If they're prepaid a memorial, that would be listed on there.
Thank you, Mike.
We're good?
Thank you for the
Is there any
information.
question from ladies? No.
Yeah, no, they don't have any questions, and if people have questions, we will have a get-together at tea time. And
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mike, for coming together.
Thank you.
For us,
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
just once, again, let me clarify a few things. I think I was talking too fast. I'm gonna go slow. Mike and Greenland Cemetery just take parts of the digging and the burial. What happens from the hospital till going to the funeral, to the cemetery is taken by another entity, that is the funeral home. Why funeral home? The sister asked the question, and I'm gonna answer you why. Because once person dies, there are certain legal requirements that needs to be fulfilled. For example, the coroner's office has to give the body away, right? And then the funeral home, why funeral home is important? Because the city of Windsor licenses the funeral home to issue a death certificate. So you cannot take a body from the hospital and just go to the graveyard. You have to have some entity that verifies that person is dead in the city of Windsor, so you can send that document, like Ibrahim Bhai was asking, so that death certificate is sent to, for example, for social insurance purposes, for Canada pension plan purposes, or whatever legal purposes, your bank accounts or whatever. So that document is issued by the funeral home. And then that once they issue the document, that the document is then registered with the city of Windsor. That so-and-so person has died, is being verified, and then he's buried. Coming to, again, to your question, because I've dealt with all this in the last 4 months. I'm gonna give you an example of a brother who died in November. He died in Detroit, and his family wanted him to be sent to Pakistan. So there are 3 different countries involved, 3 different laws are involved, 3 different immigrations are involved, right? So there is a lot of legal process that goes through to close the chapter of somebody on this planet. And that is the reason the government has legislated a funeral home. And I'm gonna give you example. I was in a meeting at Al Hijra Mosque last night, and they had a similar kind of program going on at Dominion Mosque. But that institution have purchased 2 automobiles for transportation of the body. They have their own ghusl in their mosque, like you said, back home. And similarly, they have land that they have purchased years ago. So if you die, they have everything. Only thing they don't have is authority by the city of Windsor to issue a death certificate. For that, they are using Anderson. So with the passage of time, if the community gets involved, and I'm talking about specifically the Shia community, we have 15,000 households in the city of Windsor. So if we want to accommodate our own people, the first step will be to start educating our people. They need to know that yes, we are immigrant, yes, it's our first generation here. So we do not know the laws of the land properly. We do not know if we don't wake up what happens. We do not know what assets we leave behind, what will happen to them, right? So the goal of this meeting today is to have those people who are expert in their field to come and talk and educate the community, right? So with that being said, I'm just gonna take 5 minutes or 10 minutes before I invite Brother Zia, because he's very patiently waiting and looking at me. Now, the Islamic will. Obviously, we live in Canada and there are Canadian laws, and Canadian law does not mandate people to have a will. So I'm going to say once again, the Canadian law does not mandate people to have a will, but the Islamic law does. And for that purposes, we are very grateful that Sayyid Rizvi from Jafia.org has done a lot of extensive work on the Islamic Sharia part of it, right? It's available online, although the booklet is about 30 pages long. I have one copy. I can email you if you guys wish to, so you can read through it. And I'm going to tell you why before I call Brother Zayad. Unlike the Canadian law, where everything is equally divided, the Islamic Sharia law is different. It talks about the parents in the inheritance. It talks about the spouse, the children, the next of kin, all other people, and they have a share. And one of the easiest and simplest thing that Shia Islam teaches is the 1/3 rule. I mean, it's going to be hard for you to understand, but I'm going to make it very easy. Everything that you own, there is a 1/3 portion of it that is yours. The rest you do not have a control over. So if I have $1, 33 cents is what I can give to anybody I want. The rest of the money has to be given prescribed by Quran, by Sunnah, and by the Sharia. And there is percentage what needs to be given to the father, the mother, the son, the daughter, the parents. So you cannot change that. So if you really want to follow through with the Islamic faith and you want to have your will written in an Islamic way, then there are different rules that you have to follow. And one of the rules, like I explained you, is 1/3 rule. Very easy. Everything that you own, 1/3 is what you can do a wasiya on, that this 1/3 of my money should go to my uncle, to Darya Batool, to this person, to this person. You have a full authority over it. But the rest of the 2/3, you do not have no authority over it. It's prescribed by God that this is so much the mother will get, this is so much the wife will get, this is so much the son will get, and so on. So there are potentially 32 different combinations. I'm going to give you an example. Husband and wife, 2 daughters, 1 son. Son dies, what happens? Husband, parents are living. Father dies, what happens to his share? Right? So there are 32 different combinations that are there. I have printed them out. I'm going to send you a link. So when you go home, you look at your own family situation, right? That in these 32 groups, where I fit, how many people I have in my family, how many children I have, is my parents alive or not? So you need to pick the group that you fit in, and then you fill out the wasiya to be valid Islamic Sharia will. Generally, most people do the Canadian will. Everything is equal, and everything is distributed, by law equally. Unfortunately, Islamic law is not the same, correct? So I'm just going to give you one more example. I don't want to take a lot of your time. For example, a wife. Under Canadian law, 50-50. Half hers, half yours. Sharia law, 50-50, but 50% of the house belongs to the husband and the 50% to the wife. But in that 50%, a wife does not own the land of that dwelling. So she gets 50% of her share plus 6.25% of the husband's share. Rest of his share has to be divided into his parents and brothers and sisters. So it's something that you need to learn or read, and then sit down with the Maulana of your choice and ask them to guide you in that. How much you want to leave to your whatever prescribed. So 1/3 rule is a lot of time, I have heard this thing, that it is unfair in Islamic law that a son gets 1 share and the girl gets half share. right? That is the most misconception we have. But if you apply the one-third law, right, that one-third is my money, rest is divided among all the children. But if I see that my daughters are getting less money, I can give them from that one-third that is my property, right? So prescribed share is $100 for the boy, $50 for the girl. But one-third I have, that is my money, right? I can take $50 from my own money and compensate my daughters to be even. So Islam has given exceptions and ways to overcome and equate it in every way. So this information is available at jafia.org. I will send you the link. If you guys wish, I will put it on WhatsApp group as well. So you guys can open and see what are your responsibilities under the Sharia law. Coming to a will, where I have to invite my next guest. He will talk in detail, but the information that I have, he might correct me. Ontario, I forgot the word. Mike, remind me. Handwritten will. Holographic. Holographic will. So it is so easy that husband and wife can sit down, take a pen, write a will, have two people verify it, and that constitutes a legal will. He might kill me, but does not require a lawyer. But if you want to cross all the T's and dot all the I's legally, it will be your best interest to discuss your private situation with your lawyer, who are more expert in that field, and they will guide you. Simple person like me, I'm not going to give anybody an example. I don't have 10 businesses. I don't have 18 houses. I'm not worried. I have one house and one wife and 3 kids. So the equation is very, very simple. The only asset I have is the principal residence, right? What happens to it? So it could be as easy as this. It could be as complicated as somebody owning the share of the corporation, somebody owning a company, somebody owning multiple residential properties. His will be obviously totally different. So what we have done is through Sayyid Rizvi, we have got a will, already generic will prepared. We'll give you a copy of that generic will as being attendees today. You can go, it's a simple will, you can fill it out according to the shares prescribed by Allah, which are in the brochures, right? So you can go fill it out and have 2 people attest it and keep it in under your pillow. That is what the Sharia say, but you can make a copy and put it in the bank as well. So that is something that is very important. So with that, I'm going to ask Zia Bhai to please come and provide all the necessary information for our people about the Canadian law and the guardianship law. Thank you very much.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. First of all, thank you very much, Mohsen Bhai, for giving me an opportunity to speak on this very important topic. And there is only one certain thing which can be 100% done, that is death.
Correct.
Rest of the things, there might be chances whether that can be done or not, but the death is the only thing that is for sure and certain, regardless of whatever the religion or the belief we have, it will be done for sure one day. We don't know the day or the time or the date, but it will be done. And going forward, we have only one chance to make it happen for our families or loved one, whether they will fight after your death or they will be thanking you. You have only one chance. And that chance is to write down your wishes, whatever you want. I'm not going into details towards the Islamic side. I'm not going into details and whatever the conversation we have. I must say this is not a legal advice at all.
Correct.
Okay, I'm a lawyer, so people they may see that whatever because the circumstances for each family or the member might be different.
Correct.
So it's a general discussion and overview. So I'm not going to the Islamic side, but will is the most important document after your death. During your lifetime, that is just a simple piece of paper. After your death, that's the only valid or the legal document which people they can use, either it's your family, friends, or the loved ones. Apart from that, there is nothing. If you don't have a will, it will be dealt according to Canadian law and specifically the province where you are living. Every province, they have their own rules and regulations, but depending upon your family size, if you are married, your children, there's a different treatment. If you're only husband and wife, no children, it's a different treatment. If you have only children, no wife or husband, it's a different treatment. But if you don't have anybody, then everything will go to the state. And maybe you don't want to, that your everything goes to the state for any reason, or maybe you have a better purpose or the reasons to utilize your entire life, whatever you earned, to be utilized in a way that other communities or the people may get benefit out of it. I'm not against the government should not get, but maybe there are better ways to utilize whatever you have done. Brother Mohsen said the holographic will. Well, yes, that kind of a will is a valid will, but there is a very strict requirement. As I said, you have only one chance to write down. And if you have written in the wrong way, maybe your wishes will not come true the way you planned. I'm not saying that you should go to the lawyers or the legal professionals, but if you are doing it by yourself, do it right. The legal requirement is that you should have 2 independent witnesses, and those people must be available at the same time, under the same roof, when you are writing your own will. It's not something that you write today and one witness you call next day, hey, I wrote my will yesterday, can you just witness this thing? So for the holographic will, the legal requirement is 2 independent witnesses. And those independent witnesses should not be beneficiary. Okay? Those independent witnesses should not be. It's very easy. I say, I'm your witness. Okay, so 50% or 20% going to me, right? So 2 independent witnesses at the same time, under the same roof, in the same room, when you are writing your wishes. It could be as simple, as straightforward 2 lines, or maybe it's 20 pages. It's totally up to you. But do it right. If it's not validly written, now what will happen? Maybe in real-time example, as you said, if there is no will, everything will be divided equally. Well, I'm not going into depth whether it's equally or not, but for the sake of an argument, everything will be divided equally. And you have, let's say, 3 children, and you give something to your one child during your lifetime, and onwards you want that rest of your 2 children will get from your estate when you die. And that child, which is not might be the beneficiary of your will, in his interest, if there is no will, so he will be getting the 50% or the equal share from your estate. So his utmost wishes would be that he will make every effort to prove that whatever the will you have or the holographic, it's not a valid or the genuine will, because if that will happen, he will have more share from the estate. Okay, so this is very, very important that whatever you do it right. Now, going forward, how many of you have the will? If I ask you the question, do you have any will? Okay, only 1, 2, 3, and one my sister, I think 4. Okay, so what makes you to make a will? If I ask you this question,
Love of the family.
okay,
That's right.
same thing.
Yeah.
What about you, sister?
I own only my jewelry, so I distribute it in my son.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's the one thing that you love your family, but the most important thing is that you don't want to make a trouble for them. You don't want that whatever you are leaving behind will create a problem between with the families. And in the real time, as Brother Mosa was saying in the beginning, he might have seen people fighting on one necklace,
Children, yeah.
right? And when we talk about the real estate of the property, according to me, and it's not mandatory in Canadian law, but I would say if even you have own a bank account, you should have a will. You should. Real estate is a very big thing. Having a house is a very big thing. Having a car or something is a very, very big thing. Even if you have a bank account, you must or you should have a will. Now, putting down under the pillow may not be a great idea during this time, but that shows how important is this.
It should be readily available.
Yes. And we have seen practically when people they have a will and they put it in the locker, in the bank. It's the same thing that you have a lock and you have a key, and you put the key inside first in the locker and then you lock that. Now there is no way to open that lock, right? So again, having a will, storing a will, it varies from person to person, but that's not always a great idea to have a will in a bank or the safety deposit box. Until unless if you have a given authority through a power of attorney to somebody else as a key that they can open that safety deposit box and then use it. The most important thing having a will is that you express whatever you want. And the beauty in Canadian society or the system is if you have done in a right way, you will die with this peace that it will be done as you prescribe. No one can deny that. It's a legal document. If it's properly done, it's a legal document recognized by all courts in Canada. I'm not talking about anything else, because Canadian laws, if you have written a will here, that's valid, but you may not be acceptable maybe in India or Pakistan or some other jurisdictions. But that is, you will die with this peace, whatever you have mentioned, it will be, your all wishes will be taken care and honored the way you want. You have a one chance to write it, but you have a multiple chances to revise it. During your lifetime, if you want to make amendments, you can do it. There's no hurdle for that. The same requirement is as long as there are 2 witnesses, you can make the changes in your will. Going forward, again, the most important thing what we see in real life, the process after you die. You explain the entire thing very well, starting from 911, and then going to the funeral home and the cemetery, and after that, this thing will come up. And most of the people, or if they have a good relationship with their financial institutions, most of the time, if there is a will written by maybe a lawyer, because holographic we have question marks, and if you have enough funds in your bank account, on the basis of that will, the funds can be released, which you immediately need, like 5,000, 10,000, depending upon, can be released from your own bank account for the purpose of your funeral. If there is a will properly written and your lawyer can help you out to do that, so that you should not have, worry for that 5,000 or 10,000, subject to if the funds are available in your account. Now, what we see practically, what happen is there are certain costs which are involved, even if you have a valid will, to execute the process. That depends on the value of your estate and the assets and the property, and then going to the court and for the appointment of the trustee. And the trustee would be the person who will be taking care of the things in your absence. Trustee can be the beneficiary. Trustee or the executor could be the beneficiaries, but witnesses, no question. We have seen several case laws in the court where will was validly done, but somehow the witnesses were beneficiary and their names was there. Okay. So whoever has a will, I understand that you care about your loved one, but that's not the only reason. And most of the time when people, they come to our office and we ask them this question, why you want a will, and they just said, somebody just told us to have a will. That's not the case. It's something you can literally do the best thing ever for your family and loved ones. That would be the complete roadmap, what you want that your family will be doing after your death. It is same thing that you just go on a road and you don't know where you are going. Whereas you have your complete plan. Let's say on a Google map, I will be leaving from here, going to Leamington, then London, Toronto, and then I'll come back. Instead of just, you are simply nowhere, you don't know the direction, anything. And your family, after your death, in the absence of will be facing the same things. I only emphasize, think about it, whether it's an Islamic will, Sharia will, whatever you want to do it by yourself, but you do it. Something is better than nothing. Any question?
I'm just trying to understand, you mentioned about, will, which has been prepared by the lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
And we also, talk about Islamic will.
Mm-hmm.
So are these two separate things that the lawyer can help, or how is it?
Okay. So Islamic will is not something you can differentiate. It's a different thing. These are the clauses or the terms that you want to be included in your will. So let's say you want to distribute everything 50-50. Or you say, okay, I have 5 children, everything goes to my wife. If my wife predeceases me or dies at the same time, or not alive on the 31st day, then everything will be going equally to my all 5 children, regardless of their gender, regardless of a boy or girl. You are saying this thing that it will be going equally divided amongst your children. That's the one way to put that thing. But now you say, according to Sharia, things should not be divided equally as far as the gender is concerned, if it's a female or the daughter. And now you ask your lawyer or who's helping you out, you say that, okay, instead of going for equally divided among my children, let's put it that way. And that way is, again, we have a different opinion on those things. Quran, Sharia, Sunnah, and our sects, maybe Sunni, but they have different things. I'm not going on those lines. Whatever is your belief, and you can say that, okay, according to my, and that's why your 32 document page is there. You can take your help from there and see what kind of a situation you can fit in, and you can give that clause instead of going for the equal distribution. I want you to put it like this. Canadian law recognize that. Whatever is your wish. It's not something that you must do it all the time equally. But real time we see the problem that when you just eliminate any of your family member, like immediate family member, if you have 5 children and you say, I'm not giving anything to the 5th one, but I'm giving my estate to my 4 children. Here, sometime courts see that the financial situation of the 5th person, if it's terrible, if it's on a benefits, the court will recognize this thing that that person should take something from your estate. But that's a case by case. But most of the time, if you want to make this way, the division of, let's say, 1/3 rule, you want to do that, that is totally recognizable, and you can take your help from there and then put it in the will.
One other question is, very quickly, you mentioned about the witnesses.
Mhm.
So in that case, if we are having a help from the lawyer, you still get the witnesses?
You must need a witnesses.
Okay.
The lawyer is only commissioning the witnesses, not the will.
Okay.
So how this process will work? Why it's important to going through and deal with the lawyer side? Number one is you have only one chance to write down. If it's not validly written, maybe your wishes will not come true. If it is done through a professional, you have a peace of mind that your document is valid. So over there, you still need 2 independent witnesses. And most of the time, we have a staff in our office. They can be your witness because we are not beneficiary by any manner, right? So that requirement is still there. And the lawyer is commissioning those witnesses which they are saying that the person who is writing a will is at least 18 years of age and he is sound-minded. He is in his senses. He is giving instructions in a proper way and there is no influence at all. We see this kind of a thing in elderly people. They come with the children, son or daughter, and son and daughter is saying, hey, my father wants that everything should be coming to me. Write down a will. There might be a case, but as a professional, it is our duty and job to make sure that whether it's a true, that he wants in that way, right? And then we have a process and the guidelines that what we need to follow. We can just simply say that the son or the daughter, can you please just go out and we want to talk with the person separately, and we ask all those questions to make sure that that person can give the instructions. And in real time what happens is you have your holographic will and somebody just shows up, my father or my mother was not mentally capable to write down the will, then again you don't have any chance and your family and loved ones will be in trouble. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question regarding a legal guardian for your child. So for example, I have a 2-year-old that may have intellectual disability for her whole life. So if my husband and I were to pass away, do I need to put in the will who should take care of her, or the government intervenes, or I don't know?
Okay, so you can write down each and everything in your will, and most of the time your executor or the trustee you appoint by default take care of your any children who are less than of 18 years of age. Your estate will be converting into a trust and it will not be distributed unless the child is reaches to the age of 18 or whatever the age you mentioned. I have seen few wills in the past. The parents they said, okay, we are dividing, let's say equally, but the condition is they must have a university degree. And the condition is if there is no university degree, everything is going to the charity. And they specifically say that the copy of this will should be delivered to their son or the daughter. He should be aware of why the education is more important for them. It's kind of an incentive. So coming back to your question, most of the time it's in the executive or the state trustee is by default is taking care of your children as a guardian, but you can specifically appoint somebody else. You can say executor would be, let's say, ABC, but for the guardian, could be your sister or brother, you can do that. Sir.
Okay, my question is that it's a very big misconception among a lot of people that once you have a will, everything is hunky and dory. You know, it doesn't go to the probate court, you know, which is not true in many cases because the probate is the one that authenticates the will in most cases. So is it true that you just leave the will and everything is all good to go, or still it has to go through the probate system?
Okay, so I just mentioned that earlier that there is a process. Okay, will is just a document. It will initiate or the execute a process. Then there is a court system that will authenticate and validate whether the will is done in a right way, and then the appointment of the state and the trustee will be done by the court. And once you receive the certificate from the court, then whoever is the person you appointed will then take care of the things as per your wishes. If there is no certificate, the only thing which you can utilize, as I mentioned earlier, is the bank account just for your funeral expenses. That's it. Everything will be just halt. No one can utilize it. So you will go through with the process, and that is called a probate. And even if you die without will, the process is same. The difference is we will be going probate with will and the probate without will. So without will, it's again the challenge is you are trying to find out all the family members, brothers, sisters, mother, parents, uncle, aunt, everybody. And you're writing letters to them and then bringing up on the board. But if you have a will, the things are very much easy for the court system and for the appointment of the trustee. If there is no will, even children and the family are fighting on them. No, I would be appointed as a trustee. The other one say, no, he's not the right person. I would be appointed as the state trustee. So there is a process you need to follow. Having a will enable you to have that court process stream and very smooth. Sir.
And what's happened that why we need a will, that when if we have everything on a joint, I mean that everybody, suppose a bank account, I have a bank account, suppose, everybody, I have a 4 kids or 5 kids, everybody is on a bank account. Do I need a will?
Okay. If you have only that bank account and 4 people are on that bank account, for example, in real time, there is a possibility that all 4 people are not putting equal effort to run that bank account. Okay? If that's the only thing and you want that, okay, this is my only thing and it should be going to my children equally, you don't need a will.
Yeah, same
That's
thing.
the only thing
Yeah,
you have.
same thing on a house or something like that, or investment, whatever it is.
So-
Everybody is involved that one.
Mhm.
So why I need a will?
Okay. For example, if you have a house joint with your wife, and but in reality there are no children on the property most of the time, and most of the time it's husband and wife on the house. I'm just giving you this example
Mhm.
to understand.
Mhm.
And now you have 4 children. Now you say, well, everything is equally between me and my wife, and I'm good. I don't need a will. And God forbid you are in somewhere, it's an accident, or maybe an aeroplane, and you both dies at the same time. Now what? This is a very good, situation. If either spouse dies at the same, not at the same time, like separately, and the other spouse must alive for 31 days. That's very important. Otherwise, your children will be living, and you dies as an intestate, meaning wife without will, and they will be having the same issues or the same problems which we just discussed. So they say, oh, I have appointed and nominated everybody, I don't need a will. There might be a scenario, good example for you, if you bring your all children on the property. That can be done if your property is, let's say, mortgage paid off. If that is not the case, you will be asking your lender or the bank first to have an approval that you can bring your child or the children on the property on title. So you have a
Okay,
question?
sorry, go ahead, sorry.
I was just curious about the timeline. Let's say from the time of death, then provided that there's a proper will that's been written through a lawyer. What's the timeline from the time of death to the time when things can be distributed, typically?
Okay. So in reality, I think Mark can be a right person to say this thing. Most of the time, whenever the dead body reaches to the funeral home, the very first question they ask, if there is any will. The very basic question asked, is there any will? Because if there is a will, then everything will be happening to your body, will be going or done through the person you appointed as your state trustee. Though it's not a proper appointment, but your wishes can be done maybe through the trustee, and you have certain instructions for that. The timeline, it's as long as if both husband and wife dies at the same time, you can kick in the process as soon as possible you want. If you have a death certificate with you, that's the only requirement to start the process in the court.
If I may, my question in terms of the actual process in the court, how long does that usually take?
Okay, that process is dramatically vary where you submit your application. If you submit an application in Toronto, maybe it takes months to just appointment for the state trustee. But if you submit an application in Windsor, maybe you get in a month. So it depends how busy the courts are. For appointment of the state trustee, not every court has a jurisdiction. We have a special courts for that.
Thank you.
We will have,
Just one question, last question, how I can make sure that my will is available after my death, I mean, so where I put my will legally, like, I mean, the authorities can see and funeral authorities can see my will.
Okay, so you can put your will wherever is a safe place. If you have some safe place at your home, you can do that. Normally, what we advise to our clients, that the original will, you can put it in, let's say, safety box, and you can give a power of attorney to your state trustee that they can have access to the will. Second thing is, you can leave the will to the lawyer's office. Not every lawyer has their safety deposit box. There is a legal requirement, and the Law Society is very, very strict for that. And some lawyers, they have their in-house arrangements, and you can have the copy of your will. And again, I must say, the only valid document is the original will. The photocopy or even the certified copy of the will is not a valid document.
So the digital,
No.
electronic?
No.
Oh, okay.
Only original will is the valid document. You can have a photocopy of your will, which you can share with your loved ones, but the original will, you can put it in a safe place at your home, bank, safety deposit, or the lawyer's office.
And what happened that if somebody write by mistake two wills that one, so which one is the,
Okay, The most recent one is the valid one.
We have to put the date?
No. Well, once you write down the will, there is a date for that, obviously. And so let's say one will you prepared in 2001 and the other one you did in 2020-22, and both wills comes, both are original, and the court will see only the 2022, not the 2001 one.
Thank you. And
Thank
then
you.
we have a last short question.
Yeah, what is the cost of the lawyer from drafting the will to the execution? Like, rough idea about that?
Well, execution is a very, very big term. I'm not going to say that at this point in time. But preparing a will, the standard cost is if it's a husband and wife and it's a mirror will meaning by that both have the same instructions, everything is going to wife and wife is giving everything to the husband, let's say. That is a standard will without going all these additional clauses I'm just talking about, because simple will cost you around $500 to $700 depending upon the law offices.
About 2 wills.
Yes, for the both two wills.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And if I'm still here, if you have any questions, I'm all yours.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Zia Bhai. And before we close this thing, there were certain questions. Okay, there are certain questions which were asked that were more related to the funeral home, as well as more related to the execution of the estate. Those are two different topics. But before we close, I just wanted to bring your attention to something that is very important, and that is something that I have seen in my 25 years of practice as a financial advisor. And it was hinted to me by Mike while I was in his office. The fact of the matter is that most of us, and I'm going to give you example of anybody else. I'm going to give you example of myself. If I don't wake up tomorrow, does my wife knows where I've stashed my cash? Where my accounts are? Who's my financial advisor? Who is my lawyer? Who's my real estate person? Who is my personal banker? All right. Where my RRSPs are, where my stocks and bonds are, where my other assets are. The women wake up in the morning with a dead body in the house. She has no clue. And not even women, even in most cases, men as well, right? So what good companies have done over a period of time, especially the financial planning companies, and I have a booklet from Mike as well, and he told me that if somebody books an appointment with him, he will gift that book to them. And it's a booklet that you need to take home and fill out about your personal information, your blood group, who is the executor of your estate, who should they contact if something happens to you, what are your bank account numbers, what pension plan you have. It should be all jotted out in that book and put in a safe place in the home. So if something happens, the surviving spouse has all the information, who to contact and what to do, right? So in most of the cases that I have seen in my 25 years as a financial advisor, most people are ill-equipped with that. People do not know. Like they say in our language that men never tell their salary, women never tell their age. So men have a tendency to invest and stash the money at different places where the wife doesn't know. But sometimes it could be harmful if you die. She needs to know every single thing. And if you don't want to tell her, write it in a book and have it entrusted to somebody. And who can you trust more than yourself? Maybe your own spouse. In my case, at least. So,
You are very beautifully covering.
Thank you so very much. Thank you so very much. Now, one more thing that Brother Zia talked about that I just wanted to put a little bit more emphasis on is the executor of the state has the key role, right? So, for example, you and your spouse write a will, and you appoint, I'm going to give you example, you appoint your brother in Toronto as the executor. Now the executor has a lot of responsibility, including the responsibility of your burial, right? Including the responsibility of your bank accounts, everything. You are giving him the authority that if I don't wake up tomorrow morning, you are me. Execute my orders, right? So the executor has a very important role to play. So make sure when you write your will, you pick somebody who is, according to the Sharia law, Muslim, Shia, and Adil, who is not going to cheat on the things. That is one of the Sharia requirements, that he has to be a Adil, so that nobody's cheated from the inheritance. So that was one point I wanted to make sure that is covered, that the executor is very important, who you pick. And the last topic on which Zia Bhai just hinted, I'm just going to go a little bit more in detail. And that is running a Pakistani community over the last 20 years. I've been in numerous cases where I've been with the children and child aid society and blah, blah, blah. What we need to know is that if I have a brother, say Ali Ibrar is my brother, and we have minor children, me and my spouse are in a car accident, we die, right? What happens to the minor children? They are not gifted to my brother. You have to go to the court system to get them. What they're going to do is they're going to call the child protection services, take care of the children, till you go get the court order that you are next to kin, or it is written in your legal will where you have given the custody to so and so person, right? So if that is not announced in your will, if you have minor children, that so and so is the guardian of my children if me and my wife are deceased, right? So if you have minor children, make sure that you will have the guardianship arrangement put in there, especially for those people who have minor children. And I think Brother Zia has talked about it. And the last part of it is that which one should know is that under Canadian law, we are joint owner with right of survivorship. Is that what it's called? Joint
Yes,
owner
but-
with
Yes. Subject to if both are on title.
on title, correct? Correct. If they are not,
on title,
correct.
no.
Then you are not, right? So in most cases, husband and wife, like in a nikah, a boy and a girl get together, they get married. Now they have a legal title, husband and wife, right? That legal title does not include children, because children was not in the wedding, when we got married. So children are an outside entity of husband and wife. So under the law, equal distribution. Okay, so equal distribution of the assets. But what happens is that in case of a death, if somebody goes away, Canada does not have an inheritance tax, unlike US and many other countries. There is no inheritance tax in Canada. So whatever you leave to your loved ones is not taxed. Why it is not taxed? Why the Canadian government is so generous? They are not generous, okay? The law says that the day you die, everything that is within your estate is sold at a fair market value at midnight of that night, and it has to be put in your final taxes, right? So once your final taxes are done, and the probate court allows, after paying Zia Bhai and a couple of accountants, who are doing the work on the file, whatever remaining balance is there, it is then divided into the families. So it's not that whatever you leave is all given. So inheritance tax in Canada, zero. It means if you leave assets to your children, there is no taxation. Why there is no taxation? Because when you die, you have to file your final tax return, in which you have to do, including your principal residence. It's considered as disposition. You sold it before the midnight, right? So for that, you need to have a estate plan. I think Zia Bhai will be a very good person to assist you if you have assets, to put that into your estate plan if you want to do estate planning, and if not, at least in your will. So with that being said, we are very thankful to Mike. I think first time in his life he sat on the ground like that. He remembers when he was a kid, he used to do that, but not now. So we thank Mike for coming today and giving insight. And certain things Mike said into my office, I just want to say those things. And he did say it in his speech. A cemetery is a city of dead people. It's a city of 140 acres, right? Where people are resting. And it has bylaws and it's fully regulated. Like Mike said, that 40% of the money, that grave that you purchase, for say, for example, $3,000, 40% of their money by law has to be put in a trust, just to make sure that that grave, the grass will be cut and everything will be maintained for next 50 years or next 100 years, right? So all the money that you give for the grave does not go to the cemetery. 60% goes to the cemetery, 40% goes towards the maintenance of the cemetery over the years. So with that being said, very thankful for Mike to come. If any one of them, I'm working with Mike. Actually, I have a meeting with him and his manager a few days ago. So we are working on something that we can combine the funeral home and the cemetery part together in one package. And then maybe we can come up with a family plan or a monthly plan where people can purchase the package. So going forward from Mike's thing, I know I'm talking too much. You have to understand, grave is a real estate, right? You bought a house 2 years ago. What is the price today, right? So the land itself is a real estate asset. I remember the graves were $500. Now the graves are $3,000 in 10, 12 years. So the sooner we purchase, and I recommend that if you have a family of 5 and you cannot afford 5 different graves, at least have one grave paid for by your family. And if something happens, you already have one grave. And if nothing happens and you have to move out of town to Toronto, it's Sadqa Jariya, gift to the mosque. If somebody else is buried there, you will have a sawab for the rest of your life. But this is something that you need to sincerely think, if you love your family, that if I do not wake up tomorrow morning, what will happen to my children? What will happen to my wife? How she will handle the situation that I'm going to leave them? Will I leave them in pain and suffering? That they have to call the lawyers and I have to call the accountants and I have to call the priest and so many things going on. While I'm crying and screaming with my minor children, do we want to leave them to go into the court system and do the things that they're not supposed to do? Or we can retain a lawyer and we can have everything done like Brother Zia said. Every small wish you can think of, you can write it, right? And why I said when Sheikh Naim is going to close, why I said in certain cases, it is mandatory because if you have a loan, right, and you die and the loan is not forgiven, you are not going to Jannah. Ask any scholar, okay? The debts have to be paid. So for that thing, or khums you have not paid, or zakat you have not paid, or I'm going to tell you my wish that I told my children, and that is that on the day of my death, I want certain amount to be paid as sadaqah the same night, because the first night is a very tough night, and we have prophets saying that sadaqah is what saves people from trouble and from hellfire. So you can write every small thing down, whatever you wish. Like he said, that you have one chance to write it. You have many chances to revise it, but write every small thing detail. I want to give a certain organization certain amount of money on my death, right? I want to give this person this watch. You can write in detail, like he said, 20 pages long, or you can make it as simple as one pager. It's up to what you wish and what your spouse wish. But the most and the critical important point for what we have done this seminar is to provide information, to provide knowledge to people that death, Brother Zia said that Death is what you said, uh, guaranteed. Oh, I was taught in my school two things are guaranteed: death and the taxes. If you're living in Canada, so those two things are very important, and we need to deal with them. And the estate plan and the will and the trust, they all deal with your last wishes, your assets, whether it's a bank account or you have different accounts all over the world. You need to have a will, and you can ask Brother Zia during our tea session if you have any questions specific to your situation, and you can ask Mike. He's there, and together, inshallah, in short period of time, we'll educate our community. And going forward, every person living in Windsor, it is our goal at the Batool that every Shia Muslim living in this town should have a will for their family. For the love of their family and for love of Ahl Bayt. Bar Muhammad wa ali Muhammad salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. We're going to close the session by Sheikh Naeem speaking a couple of minutes as a closing remarks. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you so very much.
Inshallah, it won't take long. Just to stress on the part of leaving your will and writing it down, I'll give you my own personal experience and how it was stressed upon me when it came to my father. Before my father passed away, he kept on stressing to me, this is exactly what I want. This is exactly what I want. Even to his final hour, he told me, this is exactly what I want, and this is how you're going to follow it. Because as in Islam, the oldest son inherits, and then they're in charge of distributing it all. So, meaning I have to pay his debts if he has debts before the children could inherit anything, before inheritance can take place according to Islam, all the debts have to be taken care of. So we have to write down who do we owe money to. Even like for example, my father had a small book and he told me this amount goes to this person, this amount goes to this person, and this amount goes to this person, and so forth, right? So although it wasn't signed, whatever, but yes, we can go to the lawyer. It's not an issue. We can go to the lawyers and tell them exactly what we want. We can do it Islamically, according to the lawyers, according to the law. I don't know the law. I'm very ignorant of the law. That's where we should go to the lawyer when it comes to these stuff. And it's very, very important to write your will. Go see a lawyer, see what your rights are, because they know the law more than me. When it comes to Islamic law, yes, I might know, but when it comes to the Canadian law or the law of the country, I'm very ignorant of it. And I'm not very knowledgeable of it because I did not go to law school. So we go to the professions, right? Just like if we're sick, we won't go to a mathematician, we'll go to a doctor. If I have a heart attack, or if we have a heart attack, I won't go to a neurosurgeon, I'll go to a cardiologist. So the same thing with the will. The lawyers are experts of this, so we should go to them because they know the best when it comes to these stuff. Okay? Sallallahu Muhammadin wa ala Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Thank you.
Thank you very much for everybody for attendance. And all hats off for Mike for sitting on the ground for 1.5 hours. We salute you, my friend. Thank you very much and God bless you all. Thank you.